How do you overcome a training plateau? When we come to think about weight loss, actually a plateau is kind of the goal we're trying to get to. We're trying to get to that point where we've achieved our goal and we can maintain that weight, that look that we want to achieve. But when it comes to training, you're always trying to improve a little bit more, whether it's trying to get a little bit more strength in a particular exercise, to build a little bit more muscle. You just want to keep edging forward all the time. And when you hit those inevitable training plateaus, you kind of feel like this is just a massive fucking ball ache or a massive ovary ache, depending on what side of the sex you are. Now, it could be a case that your reps or your weight isn't increasing within a given exercise. It could be that you're not just feeling very strong and you're not seem to be improving that strength over time. And that leads to demotivation. It leads to the fact that you possibly consider giving up totally and saying, this is not fucking worth it. Or God forbid, you go and try and shock the muscle, as Arnie would say. Because that's bollocks. We don't do that. Now, there's a lot of factors at play when it comes to a training plateau. And for me, what I would start through, if I was in your shoes and there was a situation where I was hitting a training plateau, whether that's with just generally with a specific body part or with an exercise, it would be a process of elimination. There are so many different variables going on. You've got to look at each one systematically and then start to figure out, okay, what is the thing that's potentially holding me back? And let's improve what I think is the issue, and then let's see if that has an effect. Because if you go and try and change everything all at once, you never really find out what the issue is, and then you never really solve the problem. Like changing something may cause you to make some improvements somewhere else, but actually it's not addressing the real issue. So the first thing I would do is come right back to nutrition. Focus in on that. And really, before you even start to think about what you're eating and how you set up your nutrition and is that impacting your training, is, well, look at where you are you right now? Are you in a deficit? Are you balls deep in a calorie deficit and expecting huge improvements in strength? Is it the fact that you're not hitting a training plateau? It's just your expectations are way out of whack as to what is actually realistic. Because let's be honest here, if you are in a calorie deficit and that calorie deficit continues for a number of weeks, maybe even months, then you should expect a degree of strength loss. And that might not actually just be like pure out and out strength. It might be a case of the fact that you are lower on energy, therefore you have less energy when it goes to the gym. You are therefore not going to be able to shift as much tin, as we like to say, in the gym, and therefore your training performance is slightly impaired. But that's nothing to say that you've hit a training plateau. That's not to say you've lost a fuck ton of muscle. It's just virtue of the fact that you're in a calorie deficit, you're losing weight, you're lower on energy, you feel a little bit more lethargic, your training sessions are a little bit shitter than they used to be, and therefore you're just training is just kind of grinding through rather than being this amazing hour-long smash fest that actually just sees you making progress week after week after week. Again, have that kind of honest sit down with this and say, am I expecting too much? Because you can't consistently expect all these strength progressions in a calorie deficit. You can't expect to have this perpetual upward trend of improvement week after week. It's probably just not going to happen. And in fact, it's actually the norm. Now, that aside, let's say you have optimized everything. Maybe you're not even in a calorie deficit. Maybe you're at maintenance or in a surplus. Now, have you optimized your nutrition? Protein, carbohydrates, supplements like creatine, is your sleep in check? Are they all on point? Are you adequately having protein feeding so that you're making the right adaptations from your training? So as I've spoken about in previous episodes, the 4 to 6 servings spaced throughout the day of protein, where you're having 2 to 3 normal meals, main meals of around about 0.4 to 0.5 grams per kilo, recovery rate 0.2 to 0.3, and then some pre-bed protein like 0.5 to 0.6 grams per kilo. That would be like an optimum strategy for you to basically make sure you've got the right protein balance, you're promoting muscle protein synthesis, you're hitting your leucine thresholds, all that complicated shit. But effectively, you're doing that by doing that spaced approach to your protein servings. And therefore, you are optimizing your ability to adapt to your training, to build muscle, and to effectively improve strength. Are you then, after that, kind of keeping your carbohydrates up? Are you hitting a minimum amount of fat? Because low amounts of fat can impact your production of hormones that could benefit you in terms of strength and muscle growth. Are you taking your supplements regularly? Creatine is going to help you with strength, going to help you with recovery, performance, all that sort of shizzle. So are you doing that? Are you maximizing your sleep? Sleep deprivation can have a huge impact on your training performance. If you are sleep deprived consistently and you're not focusing on it, then yeah, your performance in the gym is going to be hugely impacted. So make sure you're getting those things on point before you start looking at everything else. And it may even be that you want to start thinking about calorie cycling, carbohydrate cycling, so that when you run into those heavier training sessions where, okay, I really want to improve on this squat, or I really want to improve on bench press, okay, have fucking more calories before those days or on those days when you are training, so that you go into them perfectly fueled, ready to hit that training session hard. See if that has a material impact on what you're doing and can help you bust through that plateau. After you've got nutrition out of the way, you've kind of crossed that off the list as being one of the possible reasons for hitting that plateau. You then might want to look at your training. Now, there's a few different things you can look at when it comes to training to help you bust through that plateau. The first thing I would look at is that if it's related to a specific exercise, I would be looking at your form. I think that when you look at how you perform an exercise, if you've got poor form, you can make a certain amount of progress without it being much of an issue. Just by lifting some weight, moving mass through the air in multiple directions, you will make some progress. But that will actually start to become an obstacle and a barrier at some point further down the line. So it's a case of you've really got to look at your form. I would video it, analyze it, maybe get someone else to look at it for you who knows what they're looking for, and maybe swallow an ego pill to say, I'm going to have to come back with the weight to actually make more progress steps forward in the future. Look at that form, swallow that pride, analyze it, and make sure you're executing that exercise perfectly so you then don't create those barriers and those limitations in the future. You then might want to look at your overall training program itself, and is that set up right? Because if you're in the situation where you're just doing more volume, again, there's only so much volume that you can do before you maybe start burning out. You start really not being able to recover from those sessions, being able to then put your all into the next time you do bench press or squat, because you're absolutely just fucking yourself over from the last session and not giving yourself the opportunity to recover. So progress volume with a logical thought process to it. So plan some deloads, whether it's you go for 8 weeks or 12 weeks, have a deload and then start the volume a little bit lower than when you finish the last one. But again, when you start to progress over another 12 weeks, you're actually exceeding the volume of where you were before. And you start to systematically improve strength, improve the amount of muscle that you have so that you are continuously moving forward. So again, think about your programming. Are you actually putting the limitations on yourself by thinking that, well, if I fucking just smash myself into the ground, that must mean I'm making progress. That must mean if I'm just absolutely obliterating my chest, then I've got going to be building much more muscle over the course of X amount of weeks and months. It may not actually be the case. Then you might want to look at like the specific exercise again, not just from a form perspective, but okay, you might just be hitting a brick wall with this certain fucking exercise. And it might be that, okay, for you, that exercise maybe not be the best fit. You're not really getting on with it so well. Again, don't be sort of like wedded to specific exercises if they're just not working out for you. And again, like if you must look at it from a point of view of, okay, the form's right, the programming's right, it's just this exercise, this just ain't working for me, man. Then you think about, okay, well, do I change the training stimulus? Do I change the type of exercise that I'm using and see if that creates some more built muscle growth? It creates a little bit more of a strength improvement. Again, tinker with these different exercises, but don't tinker with exercise every fucking 5 minutes. You need to give yourself like 8 weeks of doing that exercise consistently to see if you can make those progressions. You could also say, well, okay, well, if I can't necessarily, for example, jump up a weight, if you're doing a specific exercise where you can't seem to increase the weight, it's just a little bit stalled, then use some drop sets. If it's a case of, okay, you need to increase some volume to create a bit more adaptation to be able to break through a plateau, a drop set can be a good thing to use. So again, you're putting more volume through that particular muscle, but it's not actually a case of you increasing the weight, you're just actually doing more repetitions. And again, you're giving more stimulus, more training volume to that particular muscle in a structured way. So they were the things that I would be going through. But remember, you can't keep infinitely improving. That's not the way this shit works, unfortunately. Otherwise, we'd all be fucking Superman and bench pressing fucking cars. There is gonna be a curve where you get this huge amount of strength increase early on as training is new, your adaptations are very, very quick and very rapid, and then you're going to be looking at this kind of long grey tail of working hard month after month and only seeing small amounts of progress. And again, you've got to be reflective of where you are in terms of your goals. If you're dieting and dieting potentially hard, then can you really expect to have huge gains in your strength and in building muscle and so on and so forth? So again, eventually you're going to go into this long grey tail of plateau, and that's kind of okay. And that's kind of what you've got to be accepting of. But realize that most people listening to this when hitting plateau aren't at that stage yet. So look through your nutrition. Is that on point? Are your expectations correct? Are your calories, protein, carbohydrates, fats, sleep, is all of that maximized, optimized to help you improve training performance? Is your form correct? If not, get it analyzed. Analyze it yourself if you know what you're looking at, but be objective. Also look at your programming. Is more volume actually creating less progress? Think about it, analyze it, adjust it. Think about exercises. Are there some exercises that are just not working for you that you need to change, you need to adapt? If there are, swap them out. Try a different exercise for like 6 to 8 weeks, see if that makes a difference. And then if you can, just maybe use some drop sets, some little techniques to increase training volume. And again, you've got to systematically work through those different things to make sure you're finding and pinpointing what is actually the issue for you, rather than have this scattergun approach where you just try and shock the muscles and then you try and just do anything and everything, and it all becomes this kind of just a mess. You've not really thought it through about what you're doing to try and break through that training plateau. So hopefully that helped you on your quest to break through your training plateau. If it did, come and let me know on Instagram at iron_paradise_fitness. Let me know what you thought. Maybe if you've got a specific issue with your training, maybe you want to ask me a question about that. Happy to help you out if I can. And maybe you're a beginner and you're not hitting a training plateau just yet, but you're kind of unsure where to start. Well, if you go to ironparadisefitness.com, I've got a free training program that you can download. There's also calorie guides, recipe packs, all that sort of stuff for free that you can download from there. And there's also a bunch of articles on fat loss, training, on all different aspects of fitness that I'm sure you'll find very useful too. But for now, all I'm going to say is keep living the lean life. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you for the next episode of the show.